Hello, everyone, and welcome to Loud and Agile Network. We are just about to get started with our February event. January marks our third anniversary. So LAN has been around for 3 years, and we are almost 1,400 people and members, and we are very excited. We have grown a lot, and personally, for me, one of the greatest benefits that I have received personally is to be able to meet amazing agilists and amazing leaders from across the globe who either present or come to attend our events. And one of such um, relationships that I have built that I'm very proud of is having met Bob. So I met Bob in multiple Loud and Agile Network events, and what struck me is his passion for agility, his passion for doing things for people, and he's always very engaged in all the meetups that he attends. So while we were looking for speakers for 2023, Bob's name popped up, and I'm like, let's talk to Bob and see if he'll be interested in presenting. And Bob said, I've been retired a long time ago. I've already hung my boots and my guns. I don't present anymore. I'm like, but you have so many stories to tell. You should come to Loud Natural Network and share your stories. So that's the genesis. And Bob agreed. So thank you, Bob, for agreeing to that. And one of the remarkable things that I learned from conversations with Bob is his amazing achievements while he was at ExxonMobil. And that's the topic for today: transformation of a 6,500 people organization. So Bob and I joke about it from time to time and say, Bob, you must have a lot of scars and medals to show. So I think today he's going to talk about his scars. He's also going to talk about his medals. Without further ado, please help me welcome Bob.
Thank you, Toby. I appreciate it. And what you said there about me being retired is true. I'm having a lot of fun, hanging the boots up and doing other things. But I tell you what, I can't tell you how this opportunity has fired me up again about the whole Agile community, and it's brought back some very fond memories to me. And it also gave me an opportunity to reconnect with a few of my former colleagues in the Agile space that worked with me at ExxonMobil, and it was great to chat with them. And like I said, it's just firing me up all over again. So I really appreciate it. It's brought me. I have gone through a lot of material to try to put this thing together, and because sometimes my memory's not the greatest, but I think you'll be happy with what I have to present to you all.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Bob.
Yeah. Okay. So to move on, I'm going to start with some intro and stuff, but I want to set the expectation here early is that my goal today is not to teach you how to manage an agile transformation. You all have a lot of experience in that already. My plan to review is what we did at ExxonMobil. That'll include some presentation material that I used during some of those meetings and training sessions. It'll include some of the learnings and the key success factors that we had, as well as some of the obstacles that we encountered along the way. And hopefully some of these strategies and techniques that I show you that we used, might be new to you, and you can use it in your arsenal as you work through your own agile transformation. So again, I'll introduce myself, I'll talk about my agile journey, and then get into the meat of the stuff. So again, this is the picture of me when my last day as an employee at ExxonMobil with that big grin on my face. So I know I was going off to do some nice fun things outside of the work. But I worked 38 years with Mobil and ExxonMobil. I had Virginia grad of both James Madison University and Virginia Tech with an accounting degree and an MBA in finance. And funny enough, I never did any accounting work. I did very minimal finance work. So I basically learned everything I did on the job within ExxonMobil. I love to ski, golf, and boat. I read a lot, and my wife and I do quite a bit of traveling now that we're both more or less retired. And speaking of my wife, we're married for 35 plus years. We have 3 great kids, and I just had our first grandchild back in November of last year. and she's quite the cutie pie. And we currently live in Wilmington, North Carolina, or I should say we're transitioning from Sterling, Virginia, where I am tonight, to Wilmington, North Carolina. That's probably going to be the place that we retire for good. Just to give a little overview of ExxonMobil, in case you're not familiar with the company. ExxonMobil was formed back in 2000 with the merger of Exxon and Mobil. It is the largest multinational energy company in the world, with a market cap of about $460 billion, depending on when the stock price is. There's about 63,000 employees and several thousand more contract staff, both on the business side and IT. And the 6,500 ExxonMobil IT resources or people were, both employees and contract staff. There's probably a few less now because a lot of the major project work that we've been doing has subsided somewhat. The business divisions for ExxonMobil, the upstream company was probably a lot of what you all hear in the news with the exploration and production for crude and natural gas. That is the biggest portion of ExxonMobil. Since I've retired, they've combined our downstream business, which is the gas stations that you see, the Mobil and the Exxon gas stations, lubricants organization, as well as the chemicals organization, have now combined to be called the Product Solutions Company. And then they've spawned another division called the Low Carbon Solutions. And we've been involved in low carbon solutions to the climate crisis for a number of years. But the new division is really commercializing that lower emissions business opportunities in the carbon capture or carbon storage type technology, and it continues to work on those. A fun fact about ExxonMobil that you may not know is that we produce 3% of the world's oil and about 2% of the world's energy. So it's not a very big percentage, but it's still a very big company. And lastly, since this is an IT talk, SAP is the primary ERP system that we use within ExxonMobil, and our IT organization for years has been set up to support modules within SAP. So if you're familiar with that, you understand what I'm talking about. So as far as the EMIT, we call it EMIT, ExxonMobil IT, we have global business centers in the various parts of the world. So these are where the countries that we have major IT business support centers. And, this kind of gives you an idea of the global scope and complexity of an agile transformation when you've got to include this many locations and the number of people associated with it. So just to get another glimpse of my career, I started off in the downstream business environment through many different business roles up until about 98, when Y2K came in and we decided, well, we better get off these boutique mainframe systems or they're all going to crash with Y2K. So we decided to have an SAP project to put our downstream businesses on in the US. So I went over as a business consultant designing the lubricants pricing in the SAP platform. And that started my IT career, which basically took me to the end of my career. And so my IT career included 2 SAP projects, various managerial and project management roles. And then my first indoctrination into the Agile world came when I was the project manager of a project called PROMIS, which stood for Product Management Information System. And it basically managed all the formulations for thousands of lubricant products that ExxonMobil markets across the world. And when that was done, and the success we had enabled me to become the first manager of the Global Agile Support Center, which is where we, executed the Agile transformation. And then after retiring, I came back for another 18 months as an Agile transformation consultant, primarily working with our projects organization and our portfolio management activities. So that was basically my journey. And just to kind of give you a little bit more about the Thomas project, It was the first major global SAP project that utilized Agile within ExxonMobil. We basically formed localized stable teams in the various global regions. We were in all three, AP, South America, and North America, as well as Europe. So all the sites were part of the project, and we did utilize a Scrum framework. It wasn't pretty, but it was a Scrum framework. And we were able to break down the work and deliver the functionality significantly earlier than what would have normally been if we utilized the in-the-box waterfall project methodology that was commonplace for these type of projects. And lastly, our success really started a broad-based Agile movement within the IT organization, which was flattering to us, and it was a positive move. So some of the learnings we had from this, at least I had, was that sometimes you got to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. If I would have asked to use an Agile framework for this, most likely or possibly would have been turned down. That no, this is the way we do projects. Waterfall, use that. So we didn't ask, we just did. And fortunately, it turned out good. One thing I learned out throughout my entire IT career is that if you motivate knowledge workers, they will do great things. To me, this is the basis for servant leadership. I was not an IT guy. I came in as a leader, leading people, and if I was going to be successful, it was only because the people that worked for me and worked with me were successful, and I had to make sure that they were successful. And I think that's that epitomizes servant leadership. And lead by example, and others will follow. I mean, we clearly had that happen as part of this whole endeavor of moving toward Agile. Lastly, you have to have thick skin. And when you're going outside the box, you're going to have those detractors, and you're going to have to take those stomach punches once in a while, and grin and bear it and move on. And we were all able to do that in this project. And we were so successful on this that my boss, who was the project's leader of the whole projects division, gave me a somewhat backhanded compliment and called me a virus. He called me a virus because what we were doing was growing uncontrollably, and he couldn't get his arms around it. So he was a friend of mine, so it was kind of a tongue in cheek to some extent, but he was a little concerned how it was growing uncontrollably. So we had to get our arms around it. Anyway, so let's put this to bed here and really talk about what we're here to talk about, and that is the Agile transformation. But before I get into that, our timing couldn't have been better for this, because Emmett was going under an entire digital transformation that, of course, the Agile transformation was a big piece of it. So part of the foundation of this digital transformation was a series of workshops that we called Make a Difference campaign, where we brought people in just to talk about and summarize some brutal truths of what was going on within the IT organization. Some of them were positive, but a lot of them were not so positive. And I just called a few here that were germane to us in the Agile community. And one was, we optimize for cost efficiency and risk management, not speed or agility. And I'm assuming a lot of you might come across these in your organizations too, that you're trying to transform. Second one is we lack the end-to-end visibility of our processes. And third, we were built on silos, and there were multiple handoffs within those silos, which obviously created delay. There was a lot of waste in the way we were set up. And lastly, we were falling behind on cutting edge technology. So all of these did not sit well with our business partners, and really we needed to change. So that spurred the digital transformation, of which the Agile transformation was part of it. So let's talk about that Agile transformation. So this was the formation of the Agile Support Center, which I managed, and we called ourselves Evolve. And it was called Evolve because we were evolving to a new way of working. So we were changing the culture, the DNA, if you will, of the organization as well as the way we, the processes we use and the tools we use. So when we first got started, we really had to set a framework as well as a set of core beliefs that the organization could buy into and believe in what we were doing. So the first is Lean Agile is a competitive advantage. Not that it can be, not that we hope it will be, it is a competitive advantage, and we need to take advantage of it. So we believe that Agile values and principles are required to achieve the end vision. It's not a nice to have. It's not, something that we desire. It's required if we want to achieve the end vision. So we're being very forceful with this. And secondly, we believe the Agile mindset should be applied to all aspects of work, not just IT work, all aspects of work. So these were pretty profound statements coming from a very small new organization to our organization. So the next chart I'm going to show you is one we use in just about every one of our initial presentations and training sessions. But Agile is about accelerating the delivery of value to customers, and you all may have similar charts to this, but value is the center of the equation here. But in order to deliver and accelerate the delivery of value, you need to deliver it the right time with speed. So that is a cornerstone of accelerating delivery, but that's not the only cornerstone. You need to be able to deliver the right thing at the right time. The right thing has to do with really prioritizing work properly and having that good, robust portfolio management that is bringing work to the teams that is the most valuable to the organization. And not only the right things, you need to do it the right way. And this involves your DevOps, your quality, how you're building quality into your programming, et cetera. So the triumvirate of these three are the key, and you need to do this every time. So this was a very powerful, simple but powerful chart that we utilized quite a bit with, our leadership as well as those that we were transforming. So our charter was basically 4 pillars. One, we wanted to grow the commitment to a lean, agile mindset. The mindset was key because your body will follow your mind. If you get people's minds, their bodies will follow and commit to the processes and tools. Secondly, we wanted to foster a more holistic view of the people, process, and tools. As we mentioned earlier, we were very siloed, and we needed to move more toward a holistic ecosystem type view of our work, the shop floor, if you will. And then in order to do that, we needed to provide appropriate coaching and training to the organization. And lastly, we needed to have a mechanism in place to help sustain and continue the transformation after our Agile focus on the transformation was completed. That they had a way to continue to continuously improve even after we finished up the transformation activities. So another chart that I'm not trying to teach you anything here. This is really just kind of how we portrayed ourselves, especially in the beginning of our activities as the evolved team. So the key to us was evolving to a new way of working, and we used in this chart Simon Sinek, why, start with the why. So the why, what, and how, and this summary really was a powerful way of showing our intent to the organization. First, right out of our digital transformation strategy is that digital innovation will be how ExxonMobil creates differentiating value. And secondly, over time, increasing delivery speed is the only sustainable competitive advantage. So that was directly from our IT strategy, our digital transformation strategy. So we wanted to make sure we were consistent with that. And I would tell you that you need to be consistent with those high level whys if you want to be successful in anything that is supporting it. So our what was, similar to what I'm sure you all are familiar with. You want the adaptive, collaborative culture. You want visibility of work and limit work in progress, stable, high-performing teams, iterative development, their appropriate engineering practices, continuous improvement and sustainment. So These you're all familiar with. Again, just having this all summarized in a single chart really helped get our point across. And the how was, again, through our training, our coaching, consulting, communication that enabled the organization to hear the right key messages at the right time and consistently, which was key when you have such a large transformation organization. And lastly, management support. That was obviously very key to our success, is that we had management support going forward. And again, as I mentioned, this chart really provides a summary of our intent. So there was no questions of what we were looking to do. So with that as a backdrop, let me talk about some of our key success factors, and this will be the lion's share of the what I present to you today. Then I'll get into a little more detail on some of these. The first one is, as I just mentioned on the previous slide, sufficient senior management support. And what I mean by this is you need to have the ABCs of management support. You need the alignment, you need the budget, and you need the commitment. The alignment is, are you aligned with them on what you're delivering? Yes, no. Are they going to give you enough money to do what you need to do? Yes, no. And the third one, the first two you might get. The third one can sometimes be a challenge because we would need their commitment. They need to be part of the change, not just sitting on high, looking down and seeing what's going on. They need to be committed to being part of the change, to learn about agile transformation and be part of the solution. The other thing that was a key success factor is we had a solid base of in-house agile talent. I mentioned that the Thomas project was the first large SAP project utilizing an agile framework, but it was far from the first work item that was using agile. We had a fairly good number of agile or agilists within ExxonMobil IT, and we were able to corral a good number of those to form the Agile Support Center, Evolve. So that made enabled us to really hit the ground running with these talented people already in place. The next one is Right Enterprise Agile Transformation Consultants. We primarily partnered with CA, or Computer Associates, if you recall. They got bought out since then, but at the time they had just recently bought out Rally, which might be familiar to many of you. As a matter of fact, I think the Rally system is back in play now after being changed to CA Agile Central, I think, at some point. But we also used Booz Allen, Leading Agile, Safe Organization, as well as Gene Kim. All of those and many others were part of the consulting task force that we utilized. But CA really brought in that robust transformation strategy that enabled us to be successful by providing that framework. And I'll give you a little glimpse of what that is here in the next few slides. First of all, as far as the transformation organization is concerned, the enterprise coach, which was my CA counterpart, his name is Ken Klein, if some of you know him. He actually lives across the Potomac from Loudon. And this was me as the Evolve product owner. For each transformation, we had a strategy layer and an execution layer. And the strategy layer included an Evolve contact, as well as a transformation coach who was a consultant that we brought in to provide consultation to each individual transformation organization. And then each transformation organization also had a sponsor, which was basically the level 2 manager, the person who reported to the CIO and responsible for that organization. And then he or she would hire a transformation lead that he would pluck out of his organization. And this was a full-time, this had to be a full-time job. It was not something that somebody was going to do as well as his existing assignment. We required them to be full-time person in that role. This group then worked directly with the various sites in the Americas, in Asia Pacific, and in Europe, along with local coaches, local agile coaches that we would bring in. And some of these were employees, some of these were consultants, contractors we would bring in to help train and coach the local teams at the local level. So this transformation core team had the responsibility for the activities associated with the overall transformation of this organization. Just outside this, you can see we have a Transformation Champions Network, which was a cadre of people from the various transformations, usually the higher level folks that would be involved as a working group to help us to to remove obstacles that we saw on our path and help when we needed changes to the transformation strategy. This is the group that we would lean on. So just to give you an indication, we had about 8 to 10 transformation coaches or transformations going on at the same time, and there was upwards of 40 plus local coaches, maybe more at any one given time. So there was a lot of coaching going on, and it was important that we had a good structured process to keep them all aligned. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here for time's sake, but the key here is that we had a process that allowed us to organize, execute, scale, and inspect and adapt as we went along each transformation. So maybe some of you have heard about this discover, launch, accelerate, and advance type process that CA and Rally had coined back in the day. And part of the execution of the launch was a ready, sync, go model that they used. And basically it was design, align, and launch the various teams and programs. So during the initial execution of the ready phase, that's when we form the formation of teams, as well as the education, the agile education on the processes and tools and mindset. That would take about 2 to 3 weeks. And then we would move on to executing the teams, and we would train and coach them over approximately a 2 to 3 sprint timeframe. And most of the teams, if not all of them, were on a 2-week sprint cadence. So the sync would be launching and building the backlog, and the go would be where we start to scale them to the program level. And we did use SAFe for the most part. So we were scaling to the program level, agile release trains, and then conducting the initial PI planning session, and then of course inspecting and adapting. So again, we would just continue to do this, and given this structured framework, we were able to basically rinse and repeat on this. Obviously there's slight idiosyncrasies between various transformation organizations, but the framework remained pretty stable throughout the process. So it's a lot to keep straight. So that's why we needed this repeatable framework in order for us to be successful. Okay, need to take a drink of water. Thank you. When you have this much work, you definitely need to look to manage your own WIP too. So, our organization wasn't that large. So to take on all this work, we really needed to make sure that we had the ability to manage our own work in progress. So the only way to do that is to limit the number of transformations that you take on at any given time. So what we did is we had a transformation consult request that we would provide to every transformation or every organization that wanted to go through an agile transformation. And we had questions based on team mindset, team composition, the work they were doing, management support, and business support. And based on how they answered these questions, this is just an example of a couple of questions, but we had a rating from 1 to 4 based on their answer. And then we score each transformation request. And again, highest score wins. So if you scored high, then you would probably be in the higher priority list on the transformation backlog. So just kind of an attempt at a simple but non-biased way of keeping our WIP in check. The other thing we did is we practiced what we preached. We had our own stable teams within Evolve. We did PI planning. We utilized the same ALM system that the rest of the company was using in their transformations. We had our backlogs. We even utilized a Kanban board when we handled or managed our training sessions. And we also used a learning goals format where we had, during training sessions, we asked people to put down on stickies what their learning goals were for the training session. And then we revisit this on a regular basis and move them to the done column when we were able to complete those goals. Again, it all came back to leveraging the same type of frameworks in all of the activities that we did, not just IT programming. The next was sustainment via internal networks. And I gave you a glimpse already of the first one, which was the Transformation Champions Network. And they were really our guiding coalition, and they had input into our strategy. And if they were going to give us input, we really needed to, again, commit to it and learn. So at our very first meeting, we handed out Agile books. This was one of our favorites, was The Art of doing twice the work in half the time, which I'm sure many of you have read. I'm sure it's the required reading for most Agilists, Agile consultants. And we built a backlog for this Champions Network to work on. These were the very high-level Uber type obstacles that required the very highest levels of our organization to work on. A lot of it had to do with business partnering. How do we do that? How do we facilitate the portfolio to program level planning? Ranking, the bottom left one was a big one, because our ranking system really was structured around individuals, not teams. And we really needed to move it to more of a team-based type of a ranking system. Anyway, I'm not going to go through all of these, but again, this was a truly working group, not some network that we reported back what our progress was, and all they said was, okay, that's good, see you in a month. They really was a working group. Some of the other groups that we had, or networks, again, this is part of our sustainment strategy. We had an Agile leadership network. These folks were part of the leadership team within each Agile transformation, and they formed a network to share lessons learned, the good, bad, and the ugly of what's going on within their transformation, and maybe learn something from somebody else's transformation. Basically, it's a good sharing network, so that we didn't step on the same landmine, with various transformations. We wanted to streamline that as much as possible. The Agile Practitioners Network, or APN, that network was involved at the Agile consulting levels. So that was the strategy level and the execution level coaches, consultants that would get together. And again, network and talk about the good, bad, and the ugly, and how they could help each other, to overcome some impediments that they might have, as well as sharing things that worked across the various transformations. And then the local Agile and DevOps communities of practice, they were at the local site levels, and they were volunteers from those various sites that would organize, similar to like this network, where you just organize people, come in and speak, and talk about topics that were germane to that particular site, as well as the Agile and DevOps arenas. So kind of pictorial, we had Evolve in the middle. We had the practitioners network surrounding us, as well as the Agile communities of practice in the various sites around the world. And these various networks were responsible for the sustainment going forward, because eventually Evolve was going to go away. It was just going to be them left to manage going forward. So talking about some of those obstacles and or regrets. The first one, as you can imagine, was consistency and quality of coaches at both the strategy level and at the team level. Trying to hire coaches around the world is a task in and of itself. It required a lot of us to be involved with the process. Occasionally, we would get a coach that was more interested in what they had to espouse as their way to do things, rather than committing to being more consistent with what we wanted the organization to hear and and the format we wanted to approach. Now, granted, we weren't being totally strict on that, but we had to keep it within some norms that we were trying to bring to the organization. So that was a constant pull and tug and learning and adapting, if you will. The second was transformations focusing more on output rather than outcomes, and really getting varying degrees of option. And this is tough when you're building a global network of coaches, because they have to rely on the in-house evolve context for feedback when you're getting to this situation. So that was another tough nut to crack, is to make sure that we were focusing more on the adoption rather than just the outcomes. And third one was we had a bit of friction with our enterprise project management office and the project management community in general. And I'm sure we're not the only organization that had that issue with PMOs and PMs, because in a lot of cases, and certainly in ExxonMobil's case, this move to the Agile framework was a bit of a threat to them. The funny part about it is the Evolve team reported through the projects organization with the PMO. So we worked for the same management staff, but yet we were kind of, a little bit of friction. And part of the friction was around project remaining as the primary unit of measure and adherence to a rather cumbersome stage gate project framework. Fortunately, in both these arenas, and I just, talking to one of my former colleagues, that we have now moved to product as opposed to project being primary unit of measure. So that was a big hill to climb, and overcame that. And we're finding ourselves breaking work down to much smaller increments at the portfolio level, which then eliminates or lessens the cumbersomeness of the stage gating process on that work. So in both those areas, I think we've made some headway, a lot of headway. And lastly, at least initially, the business partners that we had weren't heavily involved in the transformation. So we had significant use of business line surrogates in our PI planning, product ownership areas. So again, that's something that I think you can expect from an evolution of a transformation. Over time, the business will come into play, but it just took time. Okay, just to talk about some key messages, and how am I doing on time? I think I'm just about there. In our case, developing the transformation strategy that provided a repeatable process was key to our success, because we had so many transformations in play. Many of you might only be dealing with one, so that might not be as big of an issue. This might be, though, rallying around an organization with a willingness to commit to changing. So that request form that we had was important for us to determine whether or not a particular organization within ExxonMobil was willing to commit to the change. And if they weren't, you need to move on. And I'm sure many of you have probably banged your head against the walls on organizations that, you can bring them to the water, but they need to drink themselves. And if they're not, you might as well just move on. Focus on steady, continuous improvement, incremental change in both mindset and process. What I mean by that is, again, I use the word evolutionary versus revolutionary. I think, in this case, the turtle wins the race. As long as you're getting continuous improvement, albeit maybe slower than you might want, that's more likely to stick to the organization than somebody that is trying to change the organization too fast. So I'd say be mindful of that. And last, and I'm going to go a little more detail on this, on metrics. Obviously, we had to have metrics to measure our outcomes, but we wanted to measure outcomes more than we wanted to measure outputs. Outputs are the programs, the training, the workshops. The outcomes are knowledge transferred, the business changes, that transpire. That's really what you're looking for. The outputs are kind of the what, where the outcomes really are the why. So we had three levels of metrics. We had the adoption outcomes, where we wanted to know how deep or wide the Agile and DevOps transformations were going. The operational outcomes, are we starting to deliver value faster? And then the business outcomes, are our business partners really, are we meeting their expectations? So this next was a snapshot of one of the charts. That is my handwriting on that, where we try to develop some metrics around, teamwork, predictability, value, and speed. And again, I'm not going to go through these, but some of them are outputs, many of them are outcomes. And this middle one, maturity metrics, is really about how well the team is maturing. And we had a learning model that they would fill in every I guess it varied on cadence, but we wanted them to do it at least every program increment, where they would measure themselves against the various questions, and it was a scale of 1 to 5 on how well they were doing, and they would see how well they were doing versus the last time they did the model, or filled out the model. The key here is that they use these as trends. The absolute values on many of these metrics are not important. The trend is what's important. Hopefully it's trending positively, but if it's not, and it's trending negatively, you need to inspect and adapt and figure out why it's trending negatively. Again, use it as a continuous improvement process. And you can also use it for the basis for your definition of done. And that's what we did. I mean, when we needed to say, okay, enough of this transformation, it's because they reached certain pinnacles of the metrics. And I will also leave you with, metrics should not be used as a report card for a team, nor should they be used to compare teams or programs. When you get into this arena, that's a kiss of death, because the teams are going to start gaming the system, and you're not really going to get the information out of the metrics that you're hoping for. Lastly, and I kind of got into this, develop that sustainment model that focuses on the self-management, that community spirit. So I love about the communities of practice. It was really a community spirit, but also that the bigger picture, the ecosystem that everybody works in, to really deliver that value to your business customers. Everybody needs to have that caretaker mentality of the ecosystem. Some other, quick on this, some other learnings that we had that I thought were pretty interesting for what we did, and pretty creative, is we used the method to promote our key messages so that they sink in. And part of that was these stickers that we used to put on the back of computers. And we had a DNA strand here to show that we're changing the DNA of Emmett and the way we work. And these other various ones, we had one of Gene Kim and his famous line of, improving daily work is more important than doing daily work. So improving is more important than doing. One of my favorites is down on the bottom right here, is stop starting and start finishing. Basically, stop multitasking, get things done, and then move on to the next after you finish. And my absolute favorite, because it was a tribute to me, was when they built a sticker about one of my famous quotes of, too much whip is activity, not productivity. Put a fairly decent resemblance of me on the sticker. So that was I really appreciated. That was heartwarming that they created a sticker in my honor as I was retiring. The other thing we did was just put the sticker type key messages on the walls in many of the areas in our business support centers, near the cafeteria areas, near conference rooms. And we mention the key message, and also give them where they can find more information. So go-to/evolve was an internal mechanism to get to our evolve sites where they could find more information. So again, wanted to have that consistent message on these key themes and messages around the globe. The other thing I would recommend is don't reinvent the wheel. Use others' good ideas. We leverage the information from multiple places, multiple companies, whether it be consulting firms or other companies going through transformation. This was invaluable to us. The one I'll cite is Target, where myself and many of my colleagues went up to visit Target up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we were very impressed with their whole strategy and framework and process and their setup. And one of their setups, they had a dojo which I don't know how many are familiar with dojo, but basically it involves immersive training by bringing teams into your location. They bring their work and they actually perform their work under the guidance and consulting from our team in the dojo. So it's a very, very powerful way of getting teams accelerated through the learning process. Next is, don't be overly prescriptive. I suggest developing norms, and this is what we did, or guideposts, as some of them called it. If you're developing habits and expectations, how things are going to be done, I think you're going to find that people are receptive to that. When you start calling them rules and regulations and require compliance, that's when you're going to have people get turned off. So we need to empower teams to experiment once you've already trained them and coached them under the norms that you've set. If you allow them the liberty to experiment doing things slightly different, it should be a good thing. And maybe they'll figure out they need to go back to the way they were originally coached. That's kind of that shoo-ha-ree type mentality, if you're familiar with that. And last, make learning fun and interactive. I believe that if training done right, people are going to have aha moments where all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and they get it. And part of that is not hearing lectures, but it's by doing. So we would, and I'm sure many of you've used these before just yourselves, is the Marshmallow Tower was a big way during our training sessions to teach team dynamics. Of course, failing fast because these things would always fall over. And of course, iterative processing. That was a fun game. But one of my favorites was the Lego Flow game. And when we had multiple teams doing this, of course, it would be Agile and Scrum related and scaling across teams. And one of the experiences I recall was that one team was building a house in a garage, and the other team was building the car that was going to go in the garage. And when they got done, they brought the car over in the house, and lo and behold, the car didn't fit in the garage. And that aha moment was, why didn't we collaborate across the teams to determine the specifications for the garage and the car? So that was, I thought, a very worthwhile way to present that, and I stuck with the people on those teams. I'll tell you that. I don't know whether this is going to come through, but one of the things we had was called the backward steering bike. And this particular bike, when you turn the handlebars right, the wheel would go left. So trying to balance yourself on this was near impossible. And let me see what I can see whether this plays. Oh, for some reason it's not playing. I don't know why. Well, regardless, what happened was he was unsuccessful in steering the bike. And the whole point of this was that when you're learning something new, it takes time. And this was just epitomizing that particular key point.
My shoes are going to take my
Anyway, that was that. So that was just another way to have a little bit of fun and have a learning experience in the same breath. Lastly, this is going to be funny. Our Evolve PI planning, we would always have a particular theme. One PI planning was Oktoberfest, so we would dress up in our little, lederhosen, or we'd have this backdrop where we put our faces in it and just do some crazy stuff. Up here, we had Indiana Jones as one of the key themes, and it was me and one of my consultants dressing up as Indiana Jones. So believe me, if you can be this crazy at ExxonMobil, you can do this anywhere. So I'll leave you with that. And again, my current situation, as I mentioned earlier, I'm in retirement mode and I'm back to multitasking, but it's not really multitasking, I'm multi-slacking. So I want to thank you all for putting up with this presentation, and I hope you got something out of it. Did I put everybody to sleep?
It was awesome.
I'm wide awake. Great.
I want one of
Bob,
the
great to hear
stickers.
you. Well done.
Glad you liked it. Hope you got something out of it.
Absolutely.
Do you have any questions?
Bob, how do I get one of those
Yes, sir.
stickers?
Yes,
Can you
sir.
get
I
one
have
of
a
those stickers?
question. I have a question, actually.
I got a few of them left.
Yes, sir.
I heard.
I have a question, actually, and a comment. So when you had shown your ExxonMobil presentation, so are you doing an engineering job, sir?
I'm sorry, was that a what?
When you were showing us your Exxon presentation, were you referring to were you currently to your job as engineering as well? Because I see you did a BBA in accounting.
Oh, well, that was my job as the Agile Support Center manager. So I was responsible for the high level transformation strategy, etc. So there was another group in the DevOps space that was part of Evolve that was doing that engineering practices type work as well. I don't know whether I answered your question or not, but I was not responsible for that engineering practices side. You wouldn't want me to be.
Because I'm working at my dad's civil engineering firm as an administrator, and we do a lot of gas station work designs on Exxon.
Yeah, no, that was not germane to this presentation, the gas stations themselves. This was just the IT organization.
I see.
Anything else?
You have a
Yeah,
question?
Bob, this is Karen Zanetti. I was very impressed with all the networks that you developed. Transformation Champions Network, Agile Leadership Network, Agile Practitioner Network, and the local Agile and DevOps community of practice. So what was the path of that? What came first? Can you give us some background on how all that developed? And congratulations and kudos to you for doing all that, achieving that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, well, first of all, we had the Champions Network was the first one. That was the level twos of the organization that helped us develop the initial strategy and timeline on some of the stuff. Then was the next. Let me go back to that real quick, and we'll. So the leadership network was the next level down. Now, of course, we needed to have several transformations going on at the same time before we could really develop this particular network, or honestly, even the practitioners network. So these two started pretty much at the same time, the leadership network and the practitioners network. Once we got a base of transformations going on at the same time, it made sense to collaborate across them. So again, we could share learnings, one transformation to the next, and as you can expect, the ones that were kind of the early adopters were the ones that were providing most of the feedback to the other ones that were slightly behind them in both the practitioner network and the leadership network. Those two came into play pretty much at the same time, and then the local groups they spawned intermittently. I can't recall exactly when they came on board, and some were more successful than others. As a matter of fact, the ones outside the U.S. were much more successful than the ones in the Houston area, believe it or not.
Okay, and what roles were in the Agile Leadership Network versus the practitioner? Like, Scrum
Okay, so if I
Masters
go-
and the practitioners and
Bob,
Yeah, me-
I'll just pause here for a moment. Sorry to interrupt the flow. It is 8 p.m. And so we'll take a moment and thank everyone and thanks Bob. And we can continue if Bob so chooses to answer
Okay.
and take some time. But, just to respect everyone else's time, we wanted to recognize that it is 8. And thank you so much for attending. And thank you, Bob, for sharing your insights on this entire transformation and the multi-layers of it and the complexity of it. It's very rare to kind of have a first-hand experience in real life, be present and listen to it. So thank you everyone for coming. The link for Matthias's presentation in March has been put in the chat. Please feel free to RSVP. You won't be disappointed. He's as amazing as Bob is. We look forward to seeing you all there. And Toby, you could stop recording since it is 8 p.m. And Bob, if you don't mind staying, we have 2 more questions in the chat after Karen, if that's okay.
Okay. Mhm.
All right, thank you.